This is a video tutorial for our 12-inch Geode Agate tray mold. It's a pretty easy pour. It's going to be black in the river section, and on the front part in the islands I'm going to be filling it with some ice blue glass that we also sell in our shop. The back takes approximately 15 ounces of resin total. In the beginning I poured about 10 ounces and then I added 5 more just to make sure I had a solid base. For this pour, I'm just using some black pearl mica from Art Pro, some black pigment paste, and some laser black ultrafine glitter powder. That's from Let's Resin. As you see, I'm just pouring into the river areas. You can pour just over the back, but I'm just making sure it gets down in those little sections so there are no bubbles or empty spaces. The mold does measure 12 inches wide. The finished piece is about 11.5 inches, and it's the perfect size to put a 6-inch Lazy Susan turntable under, or you could even just mount it on a wall, use it as the face of a clock. Here's where I poured the first 10 ounces, realizing I didn't have quite enough to go on the back. I'm just using a stir stick to kind of spread it around. We also realized somewhere through this that we didn't have it on our level table, so it was kind of going to one direction. We do add it on the second part of the pour here in a minute. But pretty much I'm just spreading the resin around, waiting for this first part to set up. This is where I think we change it over. Oh, there's the leveling board. Here I'm adding, that original pour was 10 ounces, now I'm adding an additional 5 just to finish it off. I also used a little silicone stick to kind of go into the river areas to make sure that it was all filled up. Now, it's the next day and I'm demolding it. It is a little bit hard to get it out of the mold because of all the little island areas, but it comes off easily. So here's our base. You could fill this with mica, you could fill it with glitter. I chose to use our ice blue glass. I've already started it, left some sections so you could see what I was doing. I'm just filling the island areas up with the blue glass. Careful not to go over the river edges because I do want to have a smooth surface on the top of it. And I do spend quite a bit of time tapping it down, which I didn't show in the video. I deleted that part out because it literally took me over 20 minutes, I think, to fill this thing because I was getting it in every little nook and cranny. It looks very sparkly. You could just go on and pour resin. I chose to use this Duraclear gloss varnish. It's like a glue, and I use it in my geode coasters because resin tends to cover things, especially when you leave the top open, where this basically just glues it down. As you see, it looks a little bit blue when it goes on, but it does dry clear. I'm just trying to set the stones in before adding resin to it so nothing, not stones, the glass, so nothing floats away when the resin goes into it. This is a good way to try and prevent air bubbles as well. As you see, I filled a few areas, and I'm just using a pipette along with the varnish to coat every bit of the top of it. I probably could have just poured from the cup, but I didn't really want to overdo it with varnish. I didn't want it swimming in varnish because I did want to give it time to dry. The pipette does give you some control. You can go all the way up to the edges, make sure you get every little surface covered. Once I get done with putting the varnish on it, I let it set for another at least 12 hours. Sometimes it takes 24 hours for the varnish to dry. You could just leave it like this if you were going to make a clock out of it or have a wall hanging piece, but because I want to use this as a tray, I do want to put a final top coat on it. So now we're back to putting resin on. The first part of the resin, again, I could have just poured a top coat, but because there's a lot of glass on here and you can get air pockets and bubbles, I figured it was safer to just pour resin into the island areas first and saturate them and then go for the final pour on the top for the top coat. As you can see, I'm just going inside each little area. And here's the final top coat. I start off pouring slowly, giving it time to self-level itself. I believe for the top coat, I don't know how much I used for this to tell you the truth. Maybe 7 ounces total? I probably could have used a little more because I did spend quite a bit of time spreading it out to the edges, making sure it seeped down into the island areas and covered the top edges. As you see, I'm dragging it with a silicone brush. And then, of course, I had to go around the edges of it. It's sitting up on cups so it would fall down on the paper and not bunch up on the bottom of the plate itself. Again, this was like a 20-minute process, so I just cut it down to give you the general idea of how I was spreading the resin around. But it's a pretty simple thing. It makes a gorgeous little statement piece. You could fill this with, like I said, mica. You could put resin inks in here, alcohol inks, anything your heart desires. You could put flowers in there and set them under the resin. And this size does fit perfectly on a 6-inch Lazy Susan turntable. So you could use it in your dining room, your kitchen, as a vanity tray, any place you wanted something special. There, I'm just finishing up the edges. But this is our 12-inch Geode Agate tray mold. It's a one-piece mold. Pretty easy to finish, pretty easy to work on. And that's a picture of the finished piece with the mold. We hope you like it.